bring David Dezso in on this. David's a former Green Beret, has been on the show a number of times with his analysis. So what do you think of what's been going on here the last couple of days, David, where the pauses are in effect, to Robert's point, but the IDF is still very, very active? I mean, they're right in the heart of Gaza City. Do they seem to be accomplishing their goals as far as you can tell?
Great to be with you, Connell, again. I think you're seeing the pressure amount an increase for ceasefire and then hostage release, right? So what we're seeing is that due to the intelligence gaps that the IDF has, they're forced to invade and pressure and advance in a way that illuminates the picture for them and gives them some advantage. So by them softening the targets, and I think they've conducted 15,000 strikes on Hamas targets. They've only lost around 34 IDF soldiers. They've been very efficient in gaining and surrounding Gaza City while also allowing the refugees to move south. I think what you're seeing is that pressure is working, and now you're seeing Hamas is their negotiations are going from strategic initiatives, which had prisoner release of 6,000, it had aid, it had medical, it had all these things, to now it's like, well, just let fuel in so we can keep Al-Shifa Hospital running. I think their plan is working, although it still highlights that there are a number of intelligence gaps on the hostages.
All right, let's switch from this video that we're showing while David is talking to our maps so we can kind of explain exactly where some of these situations are that David is highlighting. First of all, just in the activity that the IDF has been putting in place here, where you see the red circles, that's areas of significant fighting. So the northern part of Gaza, and certainly on that the southern part of that evacuation zone, or where North Gaza sort of meets the south part of Gaza. Now, there are yellow lines on here that indicate the main roads for getting out. And when we switch over to our evacuation map, you kind of get a better idea of what they want to do. They want to take people out of that red sheltered area and just move them down here to the south. That's been happening for days and days. But the other question that's come up here, and David talked about this in recent days, are the hospitals, right? So we have the hospitals highlighted on this particular map, and one in particular, this Al-Shifa hospital here, right along the coast and in Gaza City. That has been a place where we've heard explosions, and the IDF, we'll see what they say about it when the spokesman joins us later this hour. They basically said, well, we're surrounding these hospitals. Hamas officials have been saying that we've seen attacks against these hospitals. Tough to tell exactly what is really happening. Well, what about the significance of the hospitals? Obviously from a civilian standpoint, but also whether Hamas, David, is using those as command and control centers, as the IDF alleges.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that Hamas is using those as control and command centers, and in ways to action. They probably have massive tunnel systems underneath. I think the challenge is you're seeing thousands of people consolidate around them that are civilians, that make a entry or an attack point very damaging to civilians. And so what you'll see is that they will be able to hide behind civilians as normal for Hamas, and that'll delay and it'll impact Israel's ability to go in. What I see them doing tactically is they're moving forward, they're holding position, and then they're doing reconnaissance and then strikes out of those positions. It's a smarter way to move than just taking over a city door to door like we tried to do in Mosul. It's a different tactic that we've adjusted to later in life through experience. And so I think it's a much smarter and more efficient way to take ground over time.
Finally, the hostages, you brought up these negotiations you alluded to. It's basically been rumors swirling for the last few days that some sort of a deal would be struck, whether Qatar comes in as a third party, and maybe there's a pause in the fighting for more than what we're seeing now, a few days, and it's either dozens or all of the hostages. It depends on which report you believe at which time. What would you say about the possibility, from what you've been hearing at least, of something actually getting done here? I mean, for all the talk, we still haven't seen it.
Yeah, they have 240 hostages, so they have a good amount of playing room with that, meaning they could give up 10, 50, 20. I think we've seen a variety of reports talking about a variety of different outcomes. I think you'll see a little at a time get released, really dependent on Hamas's weakening. I mean, what they're looking at is really tactical things like fuel, medical, and aid. I mean, that's very tactical things. It also shouts that they're kind of running out of their own supplies, and nor do they have a way to get resupplied by Iran or Hezbollah or other parties and proxies that have been helping them before.
All right, David Dezso is the former Green Beret. We thank you, as always, for your time and your analysis. Thank David. You.